Imagine this. You issue a check for a sum of money, but your account is overdrawn. You would expect the check to bounce, right? Not if you were Prime Minister Najib Razak. Joanna Yu, a name we've heard since the beginning of the SRC International trial, finally took the stand on day 41. And she told the court that Najib's accounts were overdrawn all the time. But since he was Prime Minister, the bank bent over backwards to make sure his checks went through. By the Malaysian Insight, this is The People versus Najib Razak. Follow us into the courtroom where it all happens. I'm Patrick Teo. Today, Najib opted for a bright blue suit with an equally bright tie that had diamond patterns on it. He was, as usual, accompanied by his aides. One of them carried his two cushions in a white paper bag. He placed them on the dock in an attempt to make the hardwood benches more comfortable for his employer. As Judge Nazlan entered the courtroom, Najib moved from the public gallery where he sat waiting to the accused dock. The prosecution's 54th witness was already on the stand. Her name is familiar. It has been said over and over again since the beginning of the trial. Multiple witnesses have talked about how she had direct contact with fugitive businessman Joe Low. Today, Joanna Yu finally made an appearance. She was a relationship manager at AmBank handling 1MDB and Najib's accounts. She's unemployed at the moment. Joanna wore a black pantsuit to court, her hair tied back neatly in a ponytail. A gold necklace with a cross pendant stood out against her plain grey top. She read from a prepared statement as prosecutor Budiman Lufti Muhammad kicked off her questioning. Joanna started managing the 1MDB accounts in 2010 and confirmed that Najib was chairman of the company's board of directors. She said she met Joe Low in 2008 through her former boss. Joe Low was the one who had contacted her in 2011 about helping Najib open his AmBank accounts. He also specifically requested for Managing Director Chia Tek Kwang to facilitate the account openings. When Tek Kwang was on the witness stand last week, he told the court that he had gone to Najib's home in Langkat Duta to open the accounts, and that's where he met Joe Low. Joanna had provided Tek Kwang with the relevant documents signed by Najib. She forwarded them to the Raja Chulan branch and informed Tek Kwang and Joe Low when the accounts opened. Ray, what else did Joanna tell the court about Najib's accounts?
It was Joe Low who asked for Najib's accounts to be identified with code names. Former Bank Negara Governor Zeti Aziz was also informed of this. The code names were meant to maintain privacy. They were 1. The 880 account was called M Private Banking-1MY. 2. The 906 account was called M Private Banking-MY. And 3. The 898 account was called M Private Banking-Y1MY. Joanna said Najib had provided 4 instruction letters to the bank to give former SRC CEO Nik Faisal the mandate to run the accounts. Then, Nik Faisal, as mandate holder, issued 2 letters to keep the account statements at the bank and to authorize Joanna and another relationship manager, Daniel Lee, to collect the statements and pass on to him. Between 2011 and 2015, Najib's accounts saw a lot of movement, Joanna said, including money coming in from overseas. When she asked Nik Faisal about it, he said the money transfers were gifts. Joanna said that because of Najib's status and position as Prime Minister and Finance Minister, the bank would not dishonor the checks issued even though his account was constantly being overdrawn. When this happens, she would contact Nik or Joe Low. She didn't have direct contact with Najib, she said, and usually met and dealt with Nik. Nik was the mandate holder after all. When he gave instructions, it was perceived as instructions from Najib himself. On March 3, 2015, the bank received 2 letters from Najib to cancel his 2 credit cards and to close his 3 accounts. Joannas said the credit cards could not be cancelled due to outstanding balances. That was paid on March 10, 2015, and then the cards were cancelled. His 3 accounts were closed and the balance was transferred to Ehsan Perdana, SRC's charitable arm.
Prosecutor V. Sitambaram took over the questioning. He began by asking her if she could carry out transactions for clients. Joanna said she couldn't. She had no access to the accounts. The bank can only act when they are given a written instruction. Even then, she would have to pass on the instructions to the relevant departments. She also confirmed that Najib was the sole signatory of his cheques. Sitam began going through transcripts of her BlackBerry Messenger chats with Nick Faisal. The conversation centered on the accounts being overdrawn and whether Nick was in town to sign documents. When she couldn't get hold of Nick, she would try to reach him via Joe Low. This was because he was the one who facilitated the account opening. Joanna also described Joe Low as the guy who dealt with any problems relating to the accounts. He would arrange for payments to be made when it was overdrawn. Sitam then turned the court's attention to chats between Joanna and Joe Low. She read out a forwarded message from Joe Low from a contact named MNR. In the message, MNR told Joe Low the Visa Platinum card wasn't working. Joanna assumed that MNR was Najib. She was told MNR was in Hawaii and needed to charge the card with $100,000. She checked with the bank's credit card department. There was nothing wrong with the card. Eventually, the transaction went through. Joe Low also asked Joanna to check on bank balances. Now, the prosecution had been questioning the witness for 2 very intense hours. Najib was slouched in the dock, his face settling into a frown. After a 10-minute break, Sitam continued examining chat transcripts between Joanna and Joe Low. At many points during the conversation, Joanna would say to the businessman, "Aiyo, account overdrawn again." The prosecutor got more aggressive with his questions, and Joanna, who was composed and cheery so far, began stumbling on her answers. A rogue banker, he called her, the term used by the defense previously. Sitam asked Joanna why she had to contact Joe Low when she couldn't reach Nick Faisal or Najib. She could have just left it. The witness said the bank couldn't allow the checks to bounce because Najib was the Prime Minister. Last week, the court was told that Najib had charged almost 4 million ringgit to his 2 credit cards. What we didn't know was that there were 16 more transactions amounting to 570,000 euros or 2.4 million ringgit. These transactions were declined. Joanna said the central bank had flagged Najib's overdrawn accounts. She told Joe Low and Nick that AmBank wanted to close the accounts. She added that Nick never asked why the accounts were overdrawn. He just seemed to know. Then it was time for lunch. When proceedings resumed, DPP Sitam continued with his questioning. This was the longest the prosecution had examined a witness in this trial. The term rogue banker continued to be tossed around, but Joanna defended herself, saying there was no conspiracy. Ray, tell us what was going on.
Before we talk about that, I'll tell you how Nick ended up handling Najib's account statements. So, according to Joanna, the bank had unwittingly sent the former PM's account statements to his office in Putrajaya. When Joe Low heard about this, he reprimanded Joanna and told her to collect those statements and hand-deliver them to Nick instead. Sitam asked if this was done to hide the statements from Najib. She said no. Then he asked her to respond to the defense's claim that she was a rogue banker who acted on Joe Low's instructions. Joanna insisted that there was no conspiracy. The bank had only contacted Nick and Joe Low whenever Najib's accounts were overdrawn, and that was it. Sitam let her go, and Harvey began his questions. The defense lawyer asked Joanna if Najib had any opportunity to look at his account statements when the MACC started their probe into the case. There was no invitation from the bank to come look at the statements, she said, but he had all the time in the world to do so. The claims that she was a rogue banker were untrue, she said. She had only acted on written instructions. In true Harvey fashion, he kept cutting her off before she could finish her answers. He asked Joanna about Teck Kwang, AmBank's former managing director, and his relationship with Jolo. Teck Kwang told the court last week that he detested Jolo because he was a tardy person who never kept his word. Joanna said the two seemed amicable with each other, but wasn't sure if they were close. They would sometimes have meals together, but she never joined them.
By now, you must be wondering why these bankers listened to Jolo. He had only facilitated the opening of Najib's account and had no known links to SRC.
Well, when Harvey suggested that even before 1MDB was formed, Jolo was influential in bringing a lot of business to AmBank, Joanna agreed. So there you go.
We'll hear more from Joanna tomorrow when court resumes at 10:30 a.m. This podcast is produced, written and mixed by Revati Subramaniam, Yapik Kwan, Yvonne Lim and Ravin Palanisamy. Additional reporting by Timothy Acharyam and Beat Hong. I'm Patrick Teo.